Well, you know, I have a few favorite Carla Bley pieces, but this one, Vox Humana, is one of them. And it's characteristic of there's all these different ways that, if I'm not mistaken, she might approach composing, that you might be able to say, well, there's a few that are like this and a few that are a little more like this. This is apparently very simple, very tonal, very beautiful, almost hymn-like piece. But again, surprises. You don't necessarily know where you are, and there's this kind of epic turn to it that is made out of the most simple materials. And amongst other things on this, it's got probably the best recorded solo that I know of Mick Goodrick. I mean, there are many to compare it to, but something about this is just deeply eloquent. And extraordinary drumming, I noticed on this, that Moses just takes to this in a way that's subtle but drives it forward. Vox Humana.
Yeah.
Beautiful guitar lines in there. Written, I assume. By now, but it continues.
We're still in the
beautiful,
in-hand,
yeah. Well, you just mentioned Robert Creeley, and now I'm going to play a piece that you composed, a very short piece called Valentine for Pen, that is off your 1980 record where you set Creeley's poetry to music, which to me, by the way, is a daunting task. Poetry has its own music, and I think there are many examples where it doesn't work that well, and I think this works beautifully. Let's hear this.
Great. I love you, says the clock, paradoxically silent, watching through the night with red eyes. I love you, says the long wooden table across from the wide bed with the bookcase upright beside it, the black lamp arching over, the old computer waiting for its work. I love you, the echoes, reaches of the tall room, the hanging pictures, the catalogs, clothes, the cat securely sleeping on the disheveled old couch, the pulled-up small rug put over its cushions, all say it, the enclosing, dear room, the balcony above which opens at each end to bedrooms of the children. I love you, says Hannah's ample, particular heart, says Will's wide, responsive heart, says each resonance of every sweet morning's opening, here said again and again, I love you.
Absolutely beautiful. Of course, you wrote the string music, and I'm not even sure you play on that.
No, not at
You
all.
don't,
That's just
yeah.
the string quartet. Yeah.
Tell us about this project, which is so unusual and striking.
Well, I had done an album of Bob Creeley's music many years before, in which his poems were sung by Sheila Jordan, and accompanied by a nice band, Bob Moses and Steve Kuhn and Dave Liebman. But I wanted on this album to exploit the musicality in Bob's reading of his own poetry. I had come to know him and had heard him read many times, and I was always struck that he sounded to me like a good tenor player. And he was doing an interesting thing too that I had not done at any time when I set his poems to music to be sung by a real singer. He always, when he read his own poems, honored the line on the page. There was always a little stop, a little hitch in his voice when he reached the end of a line before he began the next one. And I of course, saw that was a method he was adhering to, and I found that really inspiring. The order of events for the making of this album were interesting. I had Bob come to the studio, a studio here in Woodstock. And read a bunch of his poems. I selected out a couple of dozen, 2 or 3 dozen of his poems that I felt were especially amenable to musical setting. And he read them into a microphone and then left them to me. So I was dealing with not just with his texts, but with his specific readings of them when I began to work to set them to music. And it was a wonderfully lengthy, I had all the time in the world because I had no deadline. It was a wonderful lengthy process of analyzing the rhythms implicit in his readings of the poems. Often I would sit and listen for days to a particular poem that I was angling toward, and I'd eventually discover a pulse, and I firmly believe that there was a kind of that Bob had an internal pulse when he was reading these poems that was subconscious, but very strong, a very specific tempo at which each of these poems was recited, and sometimes it would take me a couple of days to find that pulse, but it would be metronomic. I could set the metronome to it, and did so and then determined that the structure of the song I was writing was a given number of bars at a given pulse.
Wow.
There were some tricky subdivisions of the pulse into specific bars based on the feet within the given lines of the poems and so on. It was a lengthy analytical process, and then at the very end of it, the tune had all but written itself. So in a way, I hardly did anything at all. The work was all Bob.
Well, that's modest.
Reading the thing. Well, and the string quartet ending up having to play all of this nonsense.
What deep listening you did to his words.
Well, it was a pleasure to do so. And I had been confronting his poetry for so long that it was kind of the icing on the cake to be doing this kind of work with his words. He was effectively a jazz poet in my estimation. He once told me that dating back to his writing in the 1950s, he often wrote to a tape of Bud Powell.
Wow.
Recordings. He was really enamored of Bud Powell's phrasing, and I think that there's this circle going on that Creeley was learning a tremendous amount from the beboppers. He was listening to music that was very formative to him in the late 1940s. He heard Bird in person several times.
Yes.
And,
well, of course, this is true of the beat poets as
right.
well.
They were Jack Kerouac used to hang out at the half note when I was playing there. He kind of made a fool of himself on many occasions, and a glorious fool.
Oh, no kidding! A little too much alcohol.
Maybe, but who's to say who had too much alcohol at the half note at that time?
When you say a fool of himself, how do you mean?
Well, he'd just get loud. Gloriously
enjoying
loud.
himself,
a
little
fool
too much.
Fool in the best sense.
What a great memory! Incredible.
Yeah, wonderful.
There's Jack Kerouac egging you on from the on. I mean, come on.
Yeah, what could be better? What could be better
amazing.
than that? But the point I'm making with Creeley is that there's a kind of circular set of influences. I think he was really influenced by jazz music, and in turn he influenced what I was writing for these records. It was all kind of chickens coming to roost.
Yeah. How interesting.
And he loved jazz music, loved improvisation, and connected it all to what might loosely be called American vocabulary, the American vernacular. I mean, I really think Charlie Parker spoke to him, and literally spoke to him, that he was inspired by the speech rhythms in Bird's playing, and his own line as a poet was affected by that. And in turn, I was deeply infected by Bob's line. I moved to write 17-bar tunes because of my deep response to his line, to the way the way his song went, and you were talking before too about Falling Grace, despite its odd numbers of bars at various points in the structure of the tune, had a kind of overriding melody that was that justified
A clear through line. Yeah.
that kind of justified the irregularities in the structure, and I think I owe that to Bob, and to the poets of his ilk as well. But he just happened to be the one that I really settled on, and it's as if it were fated to be. You know, as a 17-year-old in school, I was memorizing his poetry, and then as a 30-year-old, I moved utterly by chance to Bolinas, California, and discovered to my amazement that he lived there and became his friend, you know. And his,
I didn't know that's where he lived. Well,
and
speaking
is
of
that
Bolinas,
fate or what?
we almost, Hello Bolinas, one of your songs, almost made it onto the list. I've been to Bolinas and played in Bolinas, and I knew that you had been there. Bolinas is the most eccentric and strange place, or was back in the 80s and 90s.
I hope it still is. Yeah, I know.
Who
Less.
Who
so,
knows?
I'm
Probably
sure,
a little less so. But I'm sorry. I'll take 30 seconds to talk about myself. I was playing a gig there once, and there was a huge Nordic seaman, you know, still dressed kind of in a seafaring outfit, who was in the audience, screaming as we played, "Make mistakes, make more mistakes," and I tried not to let that bother me. I thought, well, he's a nice guy having a nice time, but he kept screaming that. So finally I said, God damn it. All right, everybody, stop. We're going to free improvise. And we went completely nuts and just played this wild and rambunctious free improv. And he leapt for joy when it was done and came up to the bandstand and hugged me and practically lifted me off my feet.
Lovely.
Was that the Bolinas you were part of?
That sounds familiar. I would have to say, yeah.
What were you doing out there? Why would you go? Why would you all of a sudden go from the urban environment to the wilds of Northern California?
I thought of myself as being in self-imposed exile, and in fact, what had happened was I had become disillusioned is too mild a word, but let's say disillusioned with the music business. I'd had it up to my teeth with the music business. I felt that it was a toxic environment. I was playing in Gary Burton's band at that time. Gary Burton's band was managed by George Wein in those days. And George Wein was also, in those days, an impresario putting on jazz festivals throughout the country and all of that. So George Wein, the manager, was selling Gary Burton to George Wein, the impresario, and taking a cut, and et cetera.
Yes.
These are, we could tell stories of this sort for days on end. You know, we could start talking about Birdland and the gangsters who controlled it, and Roulette Records and all. One could go on and on and on. At any rate, I'd kind of had it with the music business, and was hoping to find peace and happiness, just a gig in a Holiday Inn somewhere. And I wanted to take my young kids out of New York City as well. That was a reason, and my wife of the time had good reason also to go to California. So we did the classic thing in 1970. We got a Volkswagen bus packed what we owned into it and drove out to California.
You were there in the heart of it.
Yeah,
what a time for Northern California.
Indeed, right place, right time, I think, and by a series of fortuitous accidents, we ended up in Bolinas, and it wasn't until I ended up there that I discovered I was living in the midst of more poets per capita than anywhere ever in the history of humankind, dating back to Athens. It was just astonishing.
Robert Duncan.
Everybody was either living there or passing
Wow.
through at one time or another, and I was living my childhood dream. Was just a remarkably fecund time for me. And the song Hotel Hello Bolinas sprang out of that experience. When I got to Bolinas and settled my family in, one of the first things I did was to venture into San Francisco to a music store to buy a keyboard, and bought one, brought it back, and wrote "Hello Bolinas" in the first triumphant blush of having settled my family in such a glorious place. The song just kind of popped out. It was one of those few ones that kind of wrote itself in that way. It was a lovely 2 or 3 years, and then I returned to real life and to the music business, I might add. And I've kind of made my peace with being a part of the music business ever since, for better or worse.
Yes, as we all must.
One does one's best, but
Yeah.
I came back to the music business because I missed the musicians I had turned my back on by moving to California, and I had to come back, and I'm glad I came back,
Yeah.
and so on.
Yes. All right. Well, let's move on now to a piece by someone you've had an extremely long association with, John Scofield. And I forgot that his first record, if I'm not mistaken, Bar Talk, was done in 1980. He was a young man, in his early 20s, I think. And this is a piece called New Strings Attached. There's a certain declamatory energy to that. You all were kind of on fire there. I hear the rock influence.
Sure,
there, don't you?
We were on a mission as well.
Yeah.
That sounds hard too. I must say, a lot of these things are not easy.
Yeah, and then John is another one that'll surprise you with you think it's going to go somewhere and it goes somewhere else.
His composing is undervalued, I think. He's a remarkable writer, and that's not a bad example.
And so your association with him now, 45 years on, he recorded all your a record of all your compositions, Swallow Tales, I think in 2020. And tell us about your affinity playing with John. Now, I should mention that both of you will be in the same place this summer at the Alternative Guitar Summit camp.
Yes.
Well, I'll interview you both together up in Big Indian. So we'll give just a sneak preview of that experience. What is the affinity that you two as musicians feel for each other?
Hard to put into words, but it's undeniable that it's there. the best way to the best way into it is to talk a little bit about meeting him. I met him in Boston in 1975. It would have been
When you were teaching at Berkeley then.
during those 2 long years when I taught it, the 2 longest years of my life. When I taught at Berkeley, and John had actually finished his time as a student there, but was kind of hanging around Boston. He was poised to make the move to New York City, but like many, he was he was frightened to make the move and was kind of dithering around in Boston, playing sessions, and some of which Gary Burton was also involved. And I came to a session and played with him for the first time when after a day of teaching at the school, and knew in an instant that I wanted to play with John a lot in the future, and more to the point, I was certain that I would. This has happened on a few occasions. It happened with Gary as well, as a matter of fact, where there was a kind of instant realization that the meeting was kind of star-crossed, that it was that there was a responsibility to carry on with an association. I just knew that my musical sensibility and John's musical sensibility were somehow attached and needed furtherance. So the next thing that happened was he became a member of Gary's quartet for a time, and we pursued our mutual exploration of the possibilities on the fingerboards of our respective instruments. And then he left Gary's band and did make the move to New York, and there were 5 intervening years. And then in 1980 he called and asked if I'd be interested in joining a trio he wanted to start with Adam Nussbaum on drums, and I readily agreed. I was living in New Haven at the time, so I made the drive into New York City on as many occasions as I could to play with him in his basement studio in Westbeth, the artist housing, in Lower Manhattan. And from the outset, we kind of set the rules that we would be playing his songs, that my songs would be a kind of separate issue. And John always played some of my songs throughout his career, but that trio was built specifically on his repertoire, and the idea was that he would, as a writer, make a context for our playing that would, on the one hand, expand our possibilities, and on the other hand, focus our possibilities, and that kind of paradox exists at the heart of a good band.
That's a great place. If he were here, which he will be, well, I'll turn to him and say, okay, talk to us
John,
about that context.
Yeah, you're on, John.
Yeah. How are we doing? We're at by the way, we're in Utopia. Utopia Studios.
I feel it. I feel it. Don't you feel
Bearsville,
it?
New York. Yeah. So this is a large ensemble, or semi-large, shall I say, by Carla Bley. And there's a few people that I want to make sure that we don't leave out, and one of them is Mike Gibbs, who you've done a lot of stuff with. I don't have him on the playlist, but you've been on a lot of important, larger ensemble record dates as well, including, I think, one with Bob Moses. Was it Elephant's Dream of Music or Visit
Yes.
with a Great Spirit?
I was on
Maybe
both of
both.
those. Yeah, I was, and with Moses on a handful of Gibbs's large projects as
Yeah.
well. The Only Chrome Waterfall Orchestra is one.
Yeah, that's an amazing piece. I love Mike Gibbs' writing. This is from Heavy Heart, which is mid-'80s,
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
yeah, it is mid-'80s.
This is another one of her compositions that is over a pedal on a slow build with the orchestration. Boy, I hate to stop that. Remind me who that is on piano?
I was wondering too. I thought it might have been Larry Willis, or it might have been Kenny Kirkland.
Kenny Kirkland.
It's
I
Kirkland.
looked it
yeah.
up and now I remember. I mean,
Yeah.
that is just an incredible energy. And-
Yeah, remarkable.
And
It
you're
was
just sitting there over and over again playing
playing
that groove.
an off-kilter
Yeah.
rhythm. It was based on the Latin tumbao. It's not there's not a downbeat to be had in that anywhere near what the bass was playing. And I thought that's an instance too where we're getting down to the meat and potatoes of being a jazz composer. There's some. Carla was providing a context there for Kenny's improvisation that was very specific and involved chords moving over a pedal point.
And allowing the piece to open up with that freedom.
Yeah, right, and just giving context. The image she often used was that the soloist was a diamond, but it needed its ring. It needed a brooch or a
That's
ring.
beautiful. Wow.
Otherwise, it was just a cut stone sitting on a table somewhere. And that's what she was doing. She was allowing Kenny to play a masterful solo.
Yeah.
That was beautiful, but it wouldn't have been so glorious were
Without
the
a
context,
yeah.
not there.
Well, we managed to somehow make it up into the mid 80s without me stating the obvious that you're playing electric bass now. But that happened.
So I am. Yeah.
Almost 20 years earlier. And we were remarking earlier, I was just visiting with your luthier Harvey Citron.
Yes.
He's made 10 basses for you. And I think your move to the electric has been well documented in other interviews, unless there's something you want to add, but it certainly is distinctive to who you are. But I do have a question for you, and I don't know if this is an apocryphal story or not, but it's a wonderful story, even if it's not true. I'm told that right at the point that you switched to electric bass, you got successive calls within a period of a few weeks or perhaps months from Keith Jarrett, Thelonious Monk, and Bill Evans to be in their groups, and you told them, "I'm sorry, if I can play electric bass, I can do it, but if you need it upright, I'm sorry, I can't do it." And then you ended up not playing in their groups. Is that something that's made up, or
No, that did indeed happen.
But can I
and
just
Sarah
say
Vaughan as
how?
well.
I mean, okay. So I'm not the most ambitious person in the world, but it would have occurred to me. I have to believe if it had been me, that I would have said, "Oh man, I'm going back to upright so I can play with these guys." But you were dogged, you were determined, and you turned down a gig with these wonderful people. Tell us about
I've got to say it did raise the issue, and I saw it exactly in those terms. I saw it as a test of my resolve to play the electric bass. I really felt that that's what was going on. Was my resolve was being put to as strong a test as could possibly be imagined. The people I yearned to play with wanted to play with me, but not with the electric bass. And that I'm all the happier to have in the end elected to remain with the electric bass. That kind of established in my mind the value in sticking with the electric bass. It was not something to be taken lightly at all. It had deep meaning, and it's been a kind of ongoing dialogue to this day with the jazz community. There's a substantial segment of it that's simply unwilling to accept that instrument. It may be because of the way it sounds, and I won't deny that that's an issue that needs to be addressed and explored. And maybe just because of the image it has as a rock and roll instrument or as a rhythm and blues instrument. Maybe there are social aspects to the jazz community's reluctance to embrace the electric bass, but it's sort of a live issue. And although there were a number of players who were unwilling or unable to go with my decision to become an electric bass player, there were also a number of wonderful players who had no difficulty accepting it, and that's fortunate for me. I managed to stay afloat.
Well, interesting that they made that choice. You wonder in a certain way why, because I think it's more the player than the instrument, but certainly you can see some reasoning there. But it reminds me of a story I heard that in the 90s, George Russell was finally asked to play at, I think it's the 90s, jazz at Lincoln Center, and he had an electric bass in his band. And this was, I think, when he wrote that African Suite. And they wouldn't let him bring the electric bass in. And to his great credit, God bless him, he said, "Then I'm not playing. I'm doing what I do." And I thought it was kind of extraordinary that prejudice persisted, and reminds me of growing up. If you stepped on a stomp box, you would get some shade in a jazz setting. And fortunately, people like John Scofield and Mike Stern made it okay.
Yeah,
for the rest of us.
it was inevitable that the walls come down, and I mean it's inevitable that jazz music expand
Yes.
to embrace its surroundings. That's what the music has always done.
Everything evolves with technology,
Yeah.
whether we like it or not.
There is that too. Yeah, right. And there are areas in which I've planted my foot
Yes.
as well. One does,
Yeah.
one does that.
Well, it's a wonderful character trait that I'm sure has served you in good stead to be that sure of what you want. So I want to just go now. We're leaping a little bit here. And by the way, another guitarist we're missing is John Abercrombie.
Ah, indeed, yes.
Sam Brown also.
Yep.
Now, I tried to find a wonderful record that a friend of mine recorded called Noisy Old Men
Ah, see, it is a wonderful record.
on Spotify. Now, maybe I just missed it, but that's with you, John Abercrombie, and Mick Goodrick, and Gary Chafee.
Yes.
And I can't recommend that record more highly. It is a beautiful two-guitar record in which I think all of you contribute pieces.
Yes.
But I'm jumping past that to one of your quintets, and this is a record called Into the Woodwork, and this features a good friend of mine and someone who deserves to be in the company of all these other greats we're talking about, Steve Cardenas.
Mm-hmm.
What a beautiful melody. My God.
He played it beautifully too, I must say.
And I love the addition of organ, Carla Bley on organ.
Carla on organ, yeah. I've always loved her organ playing, and she'd kind of put it aside in favor of playing the piano, so I forced her back into it.
And this is called Never Know.
Right.
Just, it's a sort of a beautiful, heart-rending piece. I don't know if you were thinking of it that way, but it's just so lovely.
I was hoping it would be as lovely as it was. Cardenas really played the melody.
Well, but the
to
melody's
death,
just so stirring.
It was nice
gorgeous.
that he kind of played it unadorned too. Every composer's dream to have his melody stated without
Yeah.
too much embellishment and
Yes.
just the right amount of heart appearing on the sleeve.
Well, of course, you've led a number of groups, but it was sort of later in life that you put yourself out there, if I'm not mistaken, as a band leader. I want to make sure that we talk about the fact that you've got a new record in the can with some of these same people. Tell us about it.
I do,
Because this wasn't that long ago. This was 2019, I think, or 18 into the woodwork. So does this pick up where that leaves off, or?
That's an interesting question I hadn't considered, and of course it does. Inevitably, I'm addressing many of the same concerns I addressed in that album, but it's also a bit of a departure too. In that I took a few years. I was away from music for a handful of years, and then returned and wrote the songs that I've since recorded, and which are now, in ECM Records' vast queue waiting for
Oh dear.
for release, and
Yes.
I don't care how long it will be before it comes out. I have Manfred's handshake that it will be released, and that's sufficient for me. The cardness is the common thread, and also Chris Cheek, the tenor saxophone player, who's also on this new album, which is called Winter Songs, and is a series of 9 interconnected wintry songs. It also includes Mike Rodriguez, the trumpet player, and Gil Goldstein on piano.
Oh
and,
my, yes.
and my old buddy Nussbaum, Adam Nussbaum, my blessing and my curse, on on drums, and it was recorded in two glorious days at a venerable New York recording studio called Sear Sound,
Yes.
which has the most remarkable collection of microphones, and an equally remarkable old Neve recording console. The sound of the music is very much the sound that I heard in my head, having spent a lot of time in recording studios
Yes.
in my life. That the very particular sound that an old studio like Sear is capable of generating was exactly what I needed for this recording.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear that. That's exciting to know that that's out there.
Yeah, I'm glad to have made it. It was made because I just needed more than anything else to be really in music. I needed what music offers one. Music is kind of an enveloping experience, and there are times when it can work to your detriment. It can destroy a relationship. It can cause you to be broke and despondent and all of that. It's not all roses.
Yeah.
Being in music, but there's also a time when music can save your life, when music can be just what you need to survive, to carry
Yes.
on. And this recent recording was made because music was so because I needed music
Yes.
so much, and it indeed gave me what I needed. There's a wonderful lesson there for.
Well, if I may speak what most of your fans know, that you lost your partner during that time period, and I'm sure there was a period of mourning, and that it sounds like that music was part of what allowed you to emerge from what must have been a very dark time back into a part of yourself that you could celebrate and feel better about being alive again.
Yeah, that is so.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, having spoken once more about Carla, your musical and romantic partner for decades, I'd like to close with a beautiful duet, and one of the great duets of my lifetime is you and her. I saw you perform a couple times and at the Jazz Standard just before the pandemic, I think. And what an amazing chemistry. What an intimate dialogue. Carla, who never supposedly considered herself much of an improviser, playing perfectly.
Uh-huh.
And you right there, this is a beautiful piece with the oddest name, Beautiful Telephones.
Yeah, but I can tell you a story
Please.
about that one.
What is it? Parts 1,
that's-
2, and 3.
Yeah, parts 1, 2, and 3. That was written in the aftermath of Donald J. Trump's ascendancy to the presidency, the first time around.
No kidding.
The story is, and apparently it's a reliable story, that when he was invited graciously to the Oval Office by Barack Obama to be introduced to his new office. There he was, Trump standing in it for the first time, gazing at the portraits of all the country's venerables and all of that stuff, and being shown around by Obama. He had nothing to say until finally, after a lengthy pause, he looked at the desk and said, "Beautiful telephones."
That's an extraordinary story.
That's a nice entry into his
Yeah.
4 years in the.
And the rest we're still living with. But,
Yeah, right. And here we go again. Yeah.
Well, we're going to draw to a close with this piece. I want to thank the staff here at Utopia, and from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank Steve Swallow for sharing so much of his life history with us. This playlist will be available to anybody who wants to hear it. Just type in Joel Harrison Spotify playlist and it'll pop up. I think I called it something like Travels with Steve Swallow, or a voyage through his history. And we can't wait to hear your next record. And we've enjoyed so much hearing this incredible odyssey of your musical life.
Well, thanks for listening, Joel, and for your interest as well. I've enjoyed it.
Wonderful. This is Beautiful Telephones, Carla Bley and Steve Swallow.